Please welcome to the stage, L. Michelle Smith, Chief Executive Officer and founder of No Silos Communications, LLC. Moderated by Kenya Blake, Managing Director and General Manager of John Middleton Company.
Welcome to the Knowing Your Value, the Key to Achieving Your Leadership Aspirations workshop. People, we are in for a phenomenal treat. Today, we have 45 minutes with the amazingly accomplished and inspirational L. Michelle Smith. I promise you, her content around leadership life lessons, leadership affirmations, and how to apply them to your intra and entrepreneurial dreams can change your professional trajectory. Al Michelle is the CEO and founder of No Silos Communications, LLC, which empowers high-performing women executives, especially women of color, to lead like rock stars and advises the companies they aspire to lead that around that intersection of tech, culture, and business. She is an ICF certified executive and personal coach, working with leaders in the Fortune 500, American Express, Microsoft, Amazon, CNN, to name a few, and our very own Executive Leadership Council. She is the author of the award-winning and best-selling book, No Thanks, 7 Ways to Say, I'll Just Include Myself, a guide to rockstar leadership for women of color in the workplace. I recently read this book and I can testify it is a must read or listen. It's also available in the audio format. Al Michelle is also the creator, executive producer, and host of the Culture Soup podcast. She is highly sought after keynote speaker, facilitator, and host on everything in that landscape of tech, business, and culture's intersection. We are fortunate to have El Michelle, and I want to get as much of her as possible today. So let's just jump right in. El Michelle, is that okay?
Yes, Kenya, what a wonderful and warm introduction. Thank you so much. I can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. Listen, one of the concepts you frequently talk about and coach is how knowing your value, and equally important, how to articulate it, can impact your leadership aspirations. I know for you, this is very personal. Tell us a little bit about your related story to get us started.
You know, there's always some storytelling, isn't it? It started for me at the age of 46. You know, for some people, it starts a lot earlier, but this was my origin story. I was sitting on the 11th floor of this big company, and this tall, very smart, very accomplished senior officer walks by my cube. And he says, you know what, El Michelle, I need you to come see me, get on my books. And I said, certainly. You know, I was in corporate communications. We treated everyone like our client. So I thought to myself, I have a new client. So I did what he said. I called his admin, got on his books. A couple of weeks later, I showed up in his office. And his office, of course, on the 37th floor. Floor to ceiling windows, I could see the entire expanse, it seemed, all the way from downtown Dallas to Fort Worth, I could see. And it was just a pristine office. And I walked in there with my paper and pen, and I said, how may I help you? And he said, oh no, how can I help you? And I was stunned because I'd never had someone of that rank lean in and offer whatever I needed. So I remember what some mentors told me. Whenever you're in the company of someone that high up, always have an ask. So I had a back pocket ask, even though I was not expecting this. And I asked him, I said, you know what? Do you have a mentoring circle? I'd love to participate. He said, your timing is impeccable. Although I'm closing that down right now, I would suggest that you get with my admin and get on my calendar once a month for 30 minutes. Suddenly I had a mentor, but he challenged me in ways that I was not prepared. He asked me point blank, why are you here? And let me tell you, that kind of threw me. I started to answer the question. I'm a communicator, so I'm going to come out with an answer. I said, well, my former boss who worked at the agency that I worked with was embedded inside. He said, no, 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 it's not what I'm asking. I said, okay. And I said, well, AT&T has a wonderful reputation and I worked for it before as an agency leader. He said, no, 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 that's not what I'm asking you. What I did not know that he was asking me, and it took me a while to marinate on it some time. This man was asking me, did I know my value? And later he said, I'm asking you, why is someone like you, you're very smart, you're accomplished, you're hip, you're fashionable, why are you at this company? I wasn't expecting that kind of question. So it started me on a course to unravel the answer to that question. Did I know my value? And the reality was at that point, I did not.
Thank you. Thank you. So it sounds like you really have to know yourself and do that soul searching in order to assert your own value.
Bingo.
Can you unpack that a bit for us? How do we figure out our personal value?
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
That's the question. That's a $100,000 question. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I learned through this journey, this story that I'm telling you, and also the writing of this book, that the hero in my narrative, and in yours too, if you allow it to be, is knowing your value. That's the hero in the book. There's a villain in the book too, and it's fear, but we'll get to that in a bit. But unraveling your value is really an exercise in learning your identity beyond your name, your surname, your accomplishments, even your job title. Because so many of us, especially in business settings, when someone asks who we are, we give our title. We associate with the company. We do all of these things and we're not saying anything. And what I learned was I was allowing other people to deem my value for me. It wasn't all bad. There were some people that had some great ideas about what I should do next, where I should go next. But then there were other people who didn't quite know my value, who would assign me to things or tap me on the shoulder. And I do those things and later learned that this isn't really me. So unraveling who you are is so important. And there are keys to your future in your past. And guess who unlocked that for me? Somebody right here at the ELC.
Oh, wow. Do you mind sharing that?
I will absolutely share that. Her name is Trudy Bourgeois. Some of you have met her before. I was in a session that this 37th floor officer sponsored me to go to. It was Strategic Pathways during Leadership Week. And I was in this room of about 200 executive women from across the United States, Fortune 500. And she challenged me in front of a lot of people. Ultimately, she taught us this exercise that we could do, and it was called the 10 most significant moments. I wonder how many of you have done this before, but it makes you look back from as far back as you can even imagine. Don't discount your childhood. And this is personal and professional. And you count those times in your life that were significant. And she had us plotted on a timeline so that we could see things horizontally. And from the very beginning, whether it was a good thing or a challenging thing or a bad thing that made us cry, she wanted us to plot those dots. On top of the line were the things that were amazing, the good things. Those things at the bottom of the line, they were the challenging things, the things that made us sad, the things that we didn't want to talk about. And we plotted those dots. And ultimately, through those 10 things, we made bell curves. And sometimes you plateaued. There were a string, you're on a streak of just killing it. And then there were times, there were valleys. And what she taught us was that your leadership platform is embedded within your story. And you also start to see trends. Now, when Kenya introduced me, she talked a lot about tech, business, and culture. I didn't just come up with that. It didn't just feel good. This was a result of that exercise. I noticed that there were trends in my childhood, all the way back to when I was 12, when I was building business or even doing STEM. My dad taught me how to code when I was 12 years old, call it programming back then. I learned how to solve the Rubik's Cube. I love numbers. And if you had asked me at age 46, what did I like? I would have said words, creating. And I discovered that there was a trend there. Later on in life, when I was 22, and I just spoke to some young artists last week with the Denise Graves Foundation. I made them remember 12, 22, and 46, because those are the three numbers, the three ages where things were very significant in my life. At 22, I actually launched a business and did not monetize it, and didn't really even know it was a business. It could have been one of the first social networks, but I just didn't know. I was just out there doing it. And sometimes you have to explore those things. But then I learned that I had an affinity to culture, and not just race, but those things that make your squad a squad. Those rituals, between your girlfriends, or even sports or music. I love culture on the macro level, on the micro level. And these are the things that really are my North Star when it comes to making decisions about what it is I want to do. So you have to go backwards to learn about yourself. And in some cases, you can even unravel some of the generational things that happen with your parents, that happen with your grandparents, to really figure out who you are.
Oh, Michelle, every time we speak, I have to take out my pen and paper and take notes. You are always dropping gold nuggets for me.
Bless you.
Always. Now, you mentioned in your book, No Thanks, 7 Ways to Say, I'll Just Include Myself, that sometimes high-performing leaders get caught up in the value that others place upon us.
Yes.
Can that hurt or help us as we reach higher in our careers? Can you just give us a little bit about that?
Let's be frank. Sometimes people pour into us and it's good. Sometimes they know our value. They recognize our value before we do. And thank God, because often they may see it before we do. And sometimes that is in those formative years. Some student asked me last week, how did you know when you were small that you could do certain things? It was my parents that poured into me in the very beginning. And if you're of faith, if you're not, you may know Philippians 4:13. They said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believe that. And I believe that to this day. So no one can really stop me because I know it's possible. But it's those moments where mentors pour into you, sponsors pour into you, that know your value, that help you to unravel your value too. And that's why I say one of the factors beyond knowing yourself and understanding your value is to lean outside of that organization in order to lean into it, which means as you're building your board of directors or your kitchen cabinet or your tribe is what I like to call it, you lean outside and you start to pull on people that know you. And I'm talking about your community, not your network. Your network is your reach. Your community, that's your power. They know you. You know them. And they can tell you when you're not clear. Now, in my situation, I had people telling me some amazing things that I needed to do. They were talking about succession. And I wasn't expecting that conversation so soon. But I had to ask myself, is it something I really wanted to do? And that's what Trudy asked me after the sessions that we went through. She said, what do you really want? And sometimes we need to sit with that question, because in the hustle and bustle and the grind of high performing leaders, we're so busy trying to make it happen that we never give ourselves the opportunity to sit and dream. And that's the first line in the book. When was the last time you allowed yourself to dream?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Can you give us a few ways that unlocking and knowing our own values improves our chances as leaders to reach our leadership goals?
Yes, absolutely. One, as much as we talk about betting on yourself, you really can't bet on yourself unless you know the value. Okay. Let's think about gambling, right? You know what you're betting on if you know the value of what you're betting on, right? And the money that you're putting up front. I'm not even a gambler. But if you're going to take a risk on anybody, why not take it on yourself? So if you know your value, you can bet on yourself. And betting on yourself means taking risk. In the book, we talk about this entrepreneurial spirit. And while I'm not urging people in corporate to go start businesses, you can extrapreneurially, I like to say. There's extrapreneurship, there's entrepreneurship, there's entrepreneurship. But I encourage people to figure out how they can upskill, learn business on the outside of that organization, bring those skills right back, and then even diversify your income so that you don't just have income coming in from one place. Let me tell you what that does. That allows you to walk in confidence. You have power then, and you can walk into rooms like LaFern Kit Beatty says in my book, who's a master coach. And she says, you can say what needs to be said without editing yourself, without fear of someone calling you angry, without fear of someone calling you hard to work with. Say it in the tone that it needs to be said. Shake the pictures on the wall if you need to. And know that if you did not say that, you may not have pushed that business forward. And if they didn't like it, it's okay. You've got opportunities on the outside. You've got income coming in.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, I want to hook on to something you said previously, because in your journey, in your leadership journey, you often referred to checking in with your board of directors, your tribe,
Yes.
Before you made any moves.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you should build your board of directors and your tribe? Can you just, I just absolutely thought that the way you've done that in your leadership journey has been monumental in your outcomes. And I think it's just an important concept.
Thank you.
Talk about
Well,
that?
it's interesting because as much as people talk about personal boards of directors or kitchen cabinets, they may tell you a little bit, they may give you a little insight on how to build it, but they don't tell you how to activate it. And I spent more time telling that in this book, and I do so when I'm speaking as well. But it's important as you're building this tribe, that the tribe, you need to understand that you can throw away the power structure. Please do. You need everybody in the tribe of different backgrounds, different power levels, different abilities, people who have different management styles and work styles, and different industries, different companies. Okay, that's the first thing. Diversify the place. Second thing, take the power dynamic out of it. The reason why I say this is when you go into a mentoring relationship, so many of us go in thinking as mentees, we're there to take, consume. The best relationships are reciprocal. You leave them value just as much as they leave you value. So if it forces you to think about what can I give, and it's not tit for tat. This is just because you value this person and you want to help them just as much as they help you. It's important to know that instead of reverse mentoring, which is what some people call it, I like to take the power out of it. There are people who will do things for you because they're so proud of what you've done for them. That officer that I talk about, who's actually an ELC member, I won't call his name, he called me one day so excited because he was with one of the CEOs. At that time, AT&T had about 3 CEOs, okay? He was with one of the CEOs, and that CEO had questions about Black Twitter. And this officer that I knew nothing about the internet, couldn't get on Twitter if you asked him to, just did not know, okay? But I was his mentee. And whenever I went into his office and we had our conversations, I always dropped some gems about social media and communicating and all of this good stuff, strategic communications. He was able to tell the CEO, because it was a crisis brewing, somebody had said something bad on Twitter about some of the other officers. And this CEO wanted to know what is Black Twitter? And he was able to explain it. This man got on the phone immediately, picked up the phone, called me and said, he sounded like a giddy kid. He was like, oh my goodness, I was with the CEO. And guess what happened? I said, what is going on? You want to tell me that he explained Black Twitter to this man? And it hit me in that moment that I was just as valuable to this mentor as he was to me. Mm-hmm. And that's why to this day, I can pick up the phone, text him anytime. Same with many of my sponsors, because they felt the value. And this is so important. We bring this up as one of the secrets in the next book. Yes, please. 7 ways to say I'm entitled to the C-suite. That there is equity in our names. Okay. I'm talking to the Eagles. We are the high performing leaders, the ones that if you do 80% instead of doing the 200 or 150% because of the old black tax, you're still outdoing your peer in their 100%. Okay. That's who I'm talking to. Okay. I'm saying that when you are killing it every time, you're slaying every day, and you're executing in ways that causes buzz, okay? People gonna talk about you if you're killing it, okay? That these leaders like to name drop your name. Go figure that out. Most of us are thinking we just want to be able to name drop St. Marshall's name. She's one of my sponsors. I just name drop her. She likes to name drop me. It's really cool, but it's because I give her value just as much as she gives me value.
Love it. Love it. Michelle, I'm going to take a question from the audience, and I absolutely love this question.
Sure.
I constantly get feedback from leaders that I have potential. What advice can you give me on moving from potential to realization and charting that path forward?
Okay. Look, I'm going to ask you to put on your self-coaching hat. And when they give you vague words like potential, you need to ask them to be more specific. There's not much you can do with the idea of potential. Again, it's vague. It's not directional. It can't point you anywhere. And until you have some solid direction on what the word potential means, you can't do anything about it. Now, what you might find is when you ask the probing questions, those individuals may not have real clear answers. It may cause them to think, but if you find that they can't give you a clear answer, that's your indication that that may be BS. But you need to raise the question. That's the only way that you're going to get the answer to start to build a plan that is solid enough to get people to start to see you as not someone with potential, but an eagle who can soar no matter what.
Love that. I love that. We have another question from the audience. As a Black male, how do you build that cabinet and tribe that you were talking about? It seems like networking and connecting with other Black men is more challenging post-college, even amongst family members.
Ooh, that's deep. Okay. You just gave me some insight. I want to hear more about that. That's Lewis. Nice to meet you, Lewis. Listen, I talked a bit about your network being your reach and your community being your power. And I believe that sometimes we don't give credit to what we already have before we go into new areas and meeting new people and trying to kind of cold call and get them to be a part of our tribe. What I ask my clients to do often, what would happen if you shake the trees on your community? Now, again, your community, that's people who actually know you and know your work. You know them and know their work. There's a mutual respect. And you know that they will do something for you. It doesn't have to be big. It could be as minor as, let me just forward your resume, or let me tap this person on the shoulder and let them be aware that you're interested in this role. It's people who will do something for you because they believe in you. So you have to shake the trees on that, because so often we let our community sit dormant. They sit dormant. They're just there. And until you've done an actual audit of who you know, who knows you, who believes in you, and take a pen and paper to this and see who's on that list. Then ask yourself, who would be interested in being a mentor? Now, here's a secret. So many of your community members are pretty vocal, especially if they're active in your life right now. You can find a sponsor this way who is already an advocate. I think that an advocate is just one shade away from being a sponsor. An advocate can be a little bit more passive, but you already have somebody who is singing your praises in rooms where you aren't. They're seen around corners that you can't be in, in rooms that you can't be in. Those are prime examples of people who might just, with a little bit of nurturing, become a member of your tribe. So your tribe is at the peak of this. It looks like a triangle. I shared this in my book. But the paradigm looks like this. The tribe is at the top. That's your ride or die. These people will do things for you. In fact, you can find that there are mentors who will even eat over and become sponsors and do things for you. It's not always so cut and dry, but you need to be able to recognize these people. Now, it's not enough just to recognize them and formalize, hey, you're my sponsor now, whether they approached you or you approached them. It is important that you activate them. And the number one way that you can activate them is to share with them your mission. What is it that you want to do? Listen, they can't act unless they have a mission. So you've got to tell them, this is what I'm trying to achieve. How can you help me? Now, I hope that helped, Lewis. Some people believe that folks in their network are prime candidates for being tribe members, but look at this paradigm, okay? Tribe at the top, community in the middle, network at the bottom. Your goal is to nurture those relationships in your network so that they can bubble up in that paradigm. But if you have people in your network that just know how to contact you and you know how to contact them, have no real knowledge of who you are, it is like cold calling, and it's trying, and it can really take it out of you. So I would encourage you to skip the network for now. Go straight for the community, understanding who they are, shake the trees on your community and see where you come out.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We have a question from the audience again that I want to go to, and it's really around aspirations. Mm-hmm. To have aspirations, you have to be able to dream.
Yes.
And think really big. What is possible? What are the possibilities? And the question is, how do we learn to dream again? So we can't even get to aspirations. Learn how to dream again. Can you speak to that?
I can, because you know what, we all have dreaming in us, and because we're where we are now, we're in the grind. Life has happened. Yes. Some of us have families. We have kids. We just come out of this pandemic. We're probably still in it. Okay, we're watching the possibility of war. Things are really crazy in our lives right now, and neuroscience talks about a memory load. And that's where our brains are so occupied that we can't create, we can't be inspired, we can't dream. Mm-hmm. So the first thing to do is to shake that memory load. And one way to do it is to pause and take some time. I encourage my clients to always take 20 minutes a day for nothing, not on your lunch hour. No, you've got to eat. I'm talking about 20 minutes of nothing to just think. Give yourself the space. You've got to give yourself the space, because neuroscience tells us a clear mind is what you need to get to insight, which actually leads to focus. So if you can get to that clear mind, and there's some mindfulness tactics that you can take, but we're just going to talk plain Jane, 20 minutes of nothing, just to start. Calendar it, block it off, make it happen every day. Now, here's the other thing. You remember that exploration of going back and looking at yourself and your 10 most significant moments? I guarantee you, here are my numbers: 12, 22, 46. I bet you somewhere in that younger time frame, you dreamed of something and somehow you let it go. Go back and tap into a time where you were free to dream. Talk to your 12-year-old self. Think about what was on your mind when you were 12, 7, 6, 10, 16, 22. Listen, the book starts out asking about dreaming, but then you start to unravel how when I was given a surplus notice, which is a very humane way of doing a layoff, you have 60 days to find another job in the company. I had exceeds ratings. I had awards, industry awards, and my entire team was being obliterated. It was going away. But I had 7 officers that were either calling me at night after hours, or they were inviting me into their offices and saying, we want you to stay. Just let us know. If you want to stay, we'll make it happen. So I gave them that ability to give me the opportunity and look for opportunities. But I already had things brewing on the outside of the company, other companies that were interested in me. I had this little seedling of a business that I'd started, which started with the podcast, but the idea of being, if I can expand my reach, I can start to sell books. I had a message. I'd already been to the publisher a few times, but it did not hit me until I had done this exercise that when I was 22 years old, I had made a list of 6 things that I wanted to accomplish that I couldn't accomplish then. I was dreaming and I didn't even call it dreaming. So there were 6 things that I wanted to do. And as I unraveled that dream that I had and revisited that list, I had accomplished 4 of them already. And when I shared this with the officer that I was sitting with at this point, who said, "We really want you to stay. What are you thinking right now?" Because this was over the course of 60 days that we had this exploration. He said, "You're going to leave, aren't you?" I was like, "Well, let me explain something to you, Saul." And I explained to him this list of 6 things that I wrote when I was 22. And I only had 2 more to do. And I said, "You know what? I owe it to myself to bet on myself and go knock out those 2 things on the list." And in 2020, I knocked them all out. I had forgotten that I said that I wanted to write books way back then. When I was 22, I was coming out with this PR or media studies master's degree, and I was a writer at heart, but I understood that I needed to make money to make a living. And so as I thought about what I could do and I explored internships, PR seemed like the best way to make money. People are shocked to this day to learn that PR is not my passion. It's not my passion. I did it with passion, but it was a means to an end. This is a great way to make money and I can have fun doing it. And I'm good at it. And I can use my writing skills. But what they didn't know was that at 22, I understood that I didn't have the connections, the contacts, the credibility to do what I really wanted to do. So what little wisdom I had at 22, I wrote those things down. And at 46, I revisited them. And I said, "You know what? I've been on track. Let me go knock these 2 things out." Go back and visit your childhood or your younger self. That will unlock your dreaming ability.
And it starts with 20 minutes to allow yourself to think.
Yeah.
You gotta
People were
create.
shocked to learn that the big dogs, the head of Apple, the head of whatever, that these white men take the time to just play during the day.
Yeah.
They'll pick up a cube or they'll pick up their golf clubs. They'll putt around. They'll, throw something around. I have balls in my office right now. And for many of us, and this is cultural, because we know the old black tax, everybody's been telling us, got to be 10 times better to get to the top. You just get in the room, let alone, you have to be doing all the things. So we have this culture of work, grind, grind ourselves into the ground, when science says that not just the white space, but the play ignites creativity and innovation in us. So when I challenge my clients and all of these big companies, what can you do to stop in the middle of the day and just play? They look at me like I'm crazy, like I'm nuts. What are you saying? I can't do that. If people ever knew that I was jogging or listening to music or jamming out to my favorite tunes, I'm not working. No, you're not, sis. No, you're not. In fact, you're letting your brain rejuvenate and you're going to go back in there and kill it even more than you would if you kept grinding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. In your book, in the very beginning of the book, you talk about your superpowers and your passions kind of leading to your value proposition. Can you leave us with some practical ways to uncover our own value and be intentional about leveraging that knowledge of self?
Absolutely. So in addition to the 10 most significant ways, that really does revolve around your leadership platform. It's important to have that. Once you've done that, put it to the side. I have a couple of other practical exercises for you. They're also outlined in the book. I like to ask my clients this question to get to their passions. Let's say it's your last day on earth. You are laying on your deathbed. You're surrounded by family, friends, everybody who's dear to you. And the minister is standing there and he's about to read the rites. And before he does, you open your eyes one last time and have this to say. What is that thing? What evokes passion in you? What is that one thing that you think needs to be fixed before you go on to glory? What is that thing that gives you so much joy that you're tickled pink? I believe that we have at least three of those. Those are your passions. Those are the things that are going to be closely aligned to your values. Now, let me tell you something about values. This is applied positive psychology. Values are our number one intrinsic motivators. We call the hidden treasures. If you can uncover those, you can find your way forward to your purpose. Now, there's another exercise that I give my clients, and it's around superpowers. These are the things that you can do if someone bound your feet, bound your hands, blindfolded you, threw you into the ocean, and you could still do that thing, like in your sleep. You're so good at this thing, right? And these are hard skills. These are not soft skills. You're already leaders. We're not talking about those things. For me, it was writing, speaking, and other forms of communication. These are the things that, I mean, look, you want to go to war? I'm going to bring my pen. Okay. Think about that thing, that skill that you have at that intersection of those passions and those superpowers. You'll be able to piece together what we call a value proposition. Now, this is me borrowing from marketing and strategic communication. You know, they have armies of people just at AT&T alone, let alone Microsoft, that think about what the brand experience is for that company. So give yourself a little bit of wiggle room here, a little breathing, give yourself a break. I'm not expecting you to come up with a value proposition in one day, all by yourself. Your brand really is that experience that people have with you, and you're intentional about it. Very different from your reputation. That's what people say about you, whether they believe in your brand or not. That's what they say about you, okay? Your brand is that intentional experience that you create, okay? Your values are embedded in that experience. That value proposition, and I give a little formula. It's very basic, but of course, like a drummer who's new and just learning, you start out tap, 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 tap before you can go, you know, like a jazz. Right. You have to start with the basics. So I give you this formula, and it kind of says, I help or support X by doing Y through or by Z. Okay. Where X, Y, and Z are your audience. You got to understand who you're doing it for. Who do you serve? And this is bigger than your job description, people. Please break out of that mold. We're talking about that thing, that one thing, that problem that you solve. That's how you really unravel who you are. And who do you do it for? What do you do for them? And how do you do it? I empower women of color to be rock star leaders by speaking, writing, and executive coaching. It sounds pretty simple, but that actually is one layer down from my big value proposition. And that involves the tech business and culture that we talked about. So if you look back on my life, you'll be able to see that I empower people and brands to thrive at the intersection of tech, business, and culture, ladders up to just about everything I've done in my life. Now, this is a great North Star for you. If you're wondering if you should take a position, do that project, launch that business, write that book, start that podcast, whatever it might be, go back to your value proposition. Does it align? And this is a great way to know if it aligns with your identity. There's a line in the book that says, do you, not her. And here's part of the problem. We see people that inspire us, and they're amazing people, and we decide we want to be just like them. And there's a fallacy in that. You can be inspired by them. You can take cues from them. But when you start to try to map out their journey and make it yours, it is not sustainable. You have to be so familiar with who you are, understanding what your North Stars are. And I go even one step higher when I talk about my values of faith, family, and freedom. If anything comes into contradiction with any of those three things, I'm out. I'm not doing it. I can say no with confidence. I can say yes with confidence.
Well, Al Michelle, you have hit us with some seriously impactful concepts. Where can we learn more about these concepts that we've talked about today? And how can the audience connect with you to seek additional support? Because we are really just scratching the surface.
Yes, sure. So I'm a writer, and the beautiful thing is that writing drives all of my businesses. Okay. So you're going to see content in the form of books. You've heard about No Thanks, 7 Ways to Say, I'll Just Include Myself. There are 2 editions of that book. The latest one is called The Remix, No Thanks, The Remix. It came out in 2021, and just recently, as of Monday, the paperback is available worldwide along with ebooks and Kindle. So go look for that. And the other thing that you can do is connect with me. I love to build my community. I feel like each time I speak, I meet new people. Connect with me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/NIN/L Michelle Smith. Find me there pretty easily. And then you can also connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter at L Michelle Speaks. And you might even see me do a whoa. Never know, never know. But I'm always going to be dropping the hints and advice and the tips and encouraging you to think through those challenging coaching questions that will get you to move forward. You can always go to lmichellesmith.com.
Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom, your resources to help us as we pursue our leadership aspirations. Michelle, is there anything else that you want to share or that I didn't ask the right question?
You asked the right questions.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before?
I have an ask. And I, again, encourage my clients to do the same thing. Always have an ask. I'm in the presence of eagles right now. So I would like to ask, if you are a woman, you're Black, and you're here, okay? There's a link that's going to show up in the chat. It's a link to a very brief survey, and I am exploring sponsorship relationships between Black women and white male sponsors. There's a reason for that, and you'll learn that when the next book comes out. Yes, please. But your input is going to give me the insight to continue on this one chapter that I'm doing around sponsorship. So it would be much appreciated if you did that.
Well, Al Michelle, we will support you with the survey. So please, people, look at the survey, respond to the survey, and then we can't wait for the book. You got us hanging there now on a cliff.
Spring 23. Look for it.
2023?
Yes.
All right, Al Michelle Smith, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it. I tell you, every time I speak with you, I learn more. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with our audience today. And yes, we are all eagles, and I love it.
Thank you so much, Kenya. And thank you to Altria for sponsoring this session. Bye, everybody.